Good evening. Tonight is July the 23rd. This is Management 3025. This is our last class meeting but one before the final exam. We meet again in 2 weeks for class, and then we have the exam. So one of the things we're going to do tonight is talk about break-even analysis, the cost, volume, profit calculations, and I would encourage you to revisit the time value of money calculations like that you saw for the first exam. Those calculations will be on there again. The break-even is, I think, a little more straightforward, but we'll practice one or two of them and see what they're like. So, let's open the floor to you first. Do you have anything at all that you'd like to discuss? Complain about it.
Another teacher? No.
I've done all the complaining I can about some of these teachers out here. Not mentioning the program director, Dr. Searcy, of course, but some of them. Nothing going on? Having a lot of fun with all those multiple choice questions?
Just trying to get all my writing correct.
Get your what?
All my writing straight.
What writing? You mean from the Caproni book?
No, I'm not gonna, I gotta finish up the writing assignment.
Oh, the written assignment.
Oh, the writing assignments.
Yeah.
Yeah, we might chat about those a little bit tonight, you know, in terms of the, just a kind of a review phase, sort of like the networking and the meeting management, and see what your thoughts were about that. And what's lurking out there? What are you working on now?
Well, 3's due tomorrow morning. Or, yeah, WA3.
By noon
And
tomorrow.
then,
Three's networking, isn't it?
That's
that's
discretionary effort.
Discretionary effort,
yeah, I still have a couple of things I don't know how to say.
that's right.
I haven't figured that out. I'll figure it out in time, but
For the last competency, the number 5, is there a length of the video that you're looking for in that?
It didn't state a length.
I don't recall.
If it didn't, I'll clarify that. Let me be sure.
I may have missed it, but.
Well, I don't want to contradict myself if I'm put something out there, but
Okay.
I will address that in the next day or two with an announcement. You remember the first video you did? We have a student, Honey Langford is her name. And of course, when you have a student named Honey, sometimes that's a little awkward. Well, Honey! Yeah. Honey is triple sharp. Honey's graduating this term. She's in the strategy course with me. She is interviewing with R.J. Reynolds. She passed the first level phone interview. And they said, for your second level interview, here's a list of questions, make us a video. Yeah. So I told her she better not screw it up. She's been through this at least once. She'll be fine. So that's encouraging.
Yes.
There was some discussion among a couple of the other students in that class who are graduating this term on what we can do to raise the visibility of our graduates with respect to employers, at least in our service area, Alachua and Bradford County. And so we are undertaking some discussions about what we can do for that. We have so few graduates, we had about 6 or 8 in spring, that it's, you can't put together a job fair and expect employers to come. But, for example, it seems to me we could at least put together a little newsletter and send it out to the Chamber of Commerce in Gainesville and up in Stark and say, here are our graduates, here's a little of their background, here's an address or a link to them, and at least get the graduates more visibility that way. And that's just a quick start. I'm sure we can have much better ideas than that. If you have thoughts along that area, I would be delighted to hear them. All right, anything else on your mind?
You did not specify a time on the competency 5 for the video.
I did not specify a time. Read me what the video is supposed to do.
Create a video in which you, in a professional attire and setting, answer the following questions. Tell me about your greatest challenge or accomplishment that illustrates your abilities as a manager. Tell me about the worst boss or supervisor you ever worked for. And 3, a manager typically must have both task abilities and relationship skills. Give me a couple of examples of each and then discuss which of these abilities or skills is most important in being a successful manager.
How long do you think that video ought to be?
About 10 minutes. Closer to 10.
What are you talking about?
I would say
Your greatest challenge. What was the others?
your greatest challenge, worst boss.
Worst boss.
That could take a while.
That particular element, describe your worst boss, is in there with a teaching point.
Yes.
What do you suppose that teaching point is?
How to
Repeat
prevent.
those
Huh?
mistakes.
Be diplomatic about it.
Don't burn your bridges.
Don't get carried away. Don't sit down and do this part after you've had a couple of drinks. Yeah, or a bad day at work. Because what would you think if you asked somebody that on a job interview and they sent you in a video applying for a job and they just went off on this boss that they hated so much and on and on and on?
What are they gonna do to you when they've had a bad day?
This is a walking explosion waiting to happen, you know, liability. Absolutely right.
We asked the question of tell us about your worst and best boss on applications at my job.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times people say that I've never really had a bad boss before, but
Then you know they're lying.
yeah,
What's the point of having that question?
just to get them to think, kind of weed out the college kids between the people who need to work. And,
How does that do that?
well, basically what I look for if I'm gonna go ahead and go forth with the application is if they just say like, I had a bad boss because I had scheduling conflicts or stuff like that. I don't really look for personal vendettas out
It
against
should give
things.
you some behavioral responses,
Yeah.
what you should be looking for out of it.
And you can turn that question into showing how a negative trait that boss may have had is a positive trait that you have. That's one thing that's possible with it.
When do we make our worst decisions? When do we make our most inappropriate
When you're
behaviors?
angry.
When you're emotional. That question, to me, is primed to see if you will become emotional. And if you do, that's a strike against. I wouldn't hire you, okay? Pretty tough. I would be looking, if possible, for you to be able to say, worst boss I ever had? Yeah, let me tell you about him. I learned a lot from him.
There you go.
What's that doing? Means you're not emotional about it, and in fact, you're taking something positive from it. You got a sense of humor. Unless you're an S personality, in which case, what does that mean? Yeah, I remember him. I learned a lot from him. What's that mean to an S personality? I got a contract on him right now. Passive aggressive, right? Sure. To me, that video would take me about 15 minutes. Because I want to paint you a picture of as much as possible of who I am and how I behave and how I see things and where my values are, how I respond, how much in control of my emotions I am, how articulate I am. And what do we know also about videos? You can't talk too slow, so take your time. So I'm going to say 5 to 15 minutes, okay? But I would caution you about going just 5 or 6 or 8 minutes, okay? Think about it now. This is a job interview. This is your shot at the job. Sell yourself very quietly. Okay? 5 to 15? Cool. Anything else?
Yeah, so let's talk about, because a lot of the next writing assignment and the next competency is a lot of talking about yourself, but you don't want to come off as cocky or braggy or,
Tell me about the writing assignment. You have to recall some of these things for me.
The writing assignment is basically writing a letter of recommendation from your point of view.
I had a BAS student come to me Friday and say, could you help me with a letter of recommendation for a job I'm going to get? And I said, I'd love to. Draft it up and let me see it. Okay? That's sort of what this is. And if you're dealing with anybody who writes a lot of those letters, they want a good start on it because you're going to remember things about yourself they may not. Okay? And you're going to have things that you want to make sure are covered. So basically what we're saying is write a letter about yourself as a letter of recommendation that one of us would be signing. That you would bring in to us and say, I think this is an honest and accurate representation of who I am and what I've done, that I think you can appreciate having known me. I request your signature. Now, in the real world, what happens is we take that letter and we tweak it, embellish it, laugh about it, whatever, you know? But it gives us 80% of the job done right there. How long do you suppose that should be?
Well, you don't wanna make it
One page.
1 to 2.
1.5.
How long a letter would you read as an HR person screening letters of recommendation?
Not more than a page.
It depends. It depends on what you're looking for. I mean, at work, the docs write letters of recommendation all the time, and they're almost always a page and a half, 2 pages.
Would it depend on how well you know the person too, though? Like,
Sure,
if you've known them
sure.
for a short amount of
And
time?
it would also depend on, if there's a wide scope of experiences and activities you need to address, then it's gonna get longer.
It would depend on what the position is that they're applying for, perhaps.
But I can tell you that when I look at a letter of recommendation on somebody and it's 2 paragraphs, I know this doesn't mean anything,
Yeah.
okay? If it's 2 pages, it's probably more serious.
I think in the thing you want it 1 to 2 pages, double space.
Yeah.
Yeah, no more than that.
Will it be in the point of view of you writing it
Yes.
Yes.
about yourself?
Yes. I will tell you that that's the mistake that most students make. They don't write it from the point of view of one of us writing it.
Yeah. You're gonna put one of our signature blocks on the bottom of it. It's from us to whoever it's going to. So that's how you write it.
So how do we do this without sounding too braggy? I mean, because, you know, there's, and even, I think that might even go back more to the marketing yourself, you know? Because I can sit here and ramble on about myself, but I don't want to, you know what I'm saying, go overboard with it. So kind of, how would you know where to draw the line? What's too much?
Real quick teaching point. You ever heard of something called the HRAIR limit?
No.
Anybody take a psychology course, ever heard of that? Scenario. A farmer's got some acres of corn out there and the crows are eating his corn all the time. So he goes out one day with his shotgun, he walks out, the crows fly away, he sits down in the corn and waits, the crows don't fly back, they know he's there. So he goes back to his farm. The next day he goes out there with his neighbor, both of them with shotguns, crows fly away, they sit down and wait. Crows ain't coming back. Crows know there's 2 of them. So he says, you go back. So his neighbor walks back to the house and he's still out there. Did the crows land? No, because they can count. 2 of them came out, 2 of them went back. Next day gets his neighbor, his son and himself, all well armed, go out and sit down in the place. Crows are gone, you know, and he sends the 2 of them back to the house. And he waits. Did the crows land? Yes. Because for crows, 3 or more is a group, or 2 or more is a group. So when you see a group go out and a group go back, well, they're gone. How many individual elements can you remember before it all becomes kind of an aggregate composite whole? Let me try this. I'm going to write some numbers on the board. Don't write them down, just look at them. Okay, you got those? Good. Give them back to me, backwards.
You couldn't see the bottom of it. You had to walk.
You were standing in front of them.
Give me what you got. How many of those numbers backwards can you remember in sequence, do you think?
12 and 8.
2, 1,
2 numbers,
That's all I see. 12 and 8.
maybe 4.
6, 1, 2, 8, 7, 1.
6, 2, 8, 6, 2, 8, 7, 5 or 6. The HRAIR limit, come on in, Jennifer. The HRAIR limit, individual items that you and I can typically remember for human beings, is 7 plus or minus 2, so 5 to 9. 5 to 9 things out of this I'll remember. If I give a speech to you and I cover more than about 6 or 7 items, that's too many for you to retain and organize. So as you're looking at this letter and saying, gee, how much am I going to say about myself? I wouldn't go more than 5 separate items that you want to make as points about how great I am. Now, how do I say how great I am without sounding pompous or arrogant? That's an art. There's no easy way to do it. Okay? I pick out the 4 or 5 things I think I want most to present about myself in this letter. I think I'd get me a thesaurus and find me very descriptive words to help in that description of what I have done and what I can do or how great I am. And then I think I'd have 4 or 5 people I'd bounce it off of before I did anything with it.
Are there phrases you recommend not using?
Do not use the word good. That's the most non-descriptive generic term around here. He's a good worker. Other than that, none come freshly to mind. Jimmy, you've had more experience with that than I have.
No, just make the words vivid. That's really what it boils down to. They should come alive, so that when the person reads that document, it represents you in a positive light. So use vivid language.
Recognize that one of us is going to sign it. So it doesn't have to be written as you would speak. It would be written as perhaps we would speak, and that person doesn't know us anyway. So be vivid.
Is it written in the letter format?
Yes.
Yeah.
So with one of y'all's
It's-
signature blocks on it?
That's right. Good. I've had 5 or 6 people come back for letters of recommendation in the BAS program, and every one of them, I said, bring me your letter.
Yep.
You wrote it in the first class you took. If you still like it, bring it in. If you don't, clean it up. Other questions?
Is it addressed to anybody in particular? Or
Just to whom it may concern, that'll be fine. And you do make a point there. If you knew it was going for a particular job and you knew some of the parameters of that job or the people you'd be working with, you might tailor it to that, you know. But we're doing it on more of a generic basis right now. Anything else?
So we're not looking at like, we're saying we're applying for a particular job.
No.
This is really just something.
If you, I would say that if you have a job in mind, you might add that in as a note to us before you send, or as you send it in, say, I've crafted this letter as part of my application for this job, and a little description of it. That would be fine. Make it more useful to you perhaps too. Yes, ma'am?
Does it have to stay centered on what we've accomplished in this class, we feel we've accomplished in this class?
No.
Or,
You as a complete person,
okay,
but in the context of, at least somewhat of, I'm finishing, or I'm in the bachelor's program, or I'm approaching finishing my bachelor's degree, blah, blah, blah. But here's everything else I've done, and here's my academics, whatever balance is best for you.
And some of you already know what your goal is when you complete your degree. I mean, this might be a way to begin to fine-tune what you're going to say at some point when you're done.
How many classes have you written resumes for?
Professional writing. We've almost did the same as professional writing.
Get it right this time.
I know. Did it right last time.
There you go.
Except we didn't do it from someone else's point of view. We did it from our point of view.
Yeah.
I do have a question about resumes. In the professional writing class, it was stressed that it was be one page, and followed a very specific format. I like how you left it a little bit more open format, but make it still look professional, that sort of thing, and do the 3 to 5 pages. In the real world, when you're out there, what are they really looking for? I mean, me personally, as somebody who hires, I don't know. I mean, I'm hiring a lot of entry-level positions, so I don't expect to get a lot of long resumes.
Right.
But when you start moving up into management, what is an appropriate size resume or CV for us to submit to a job application? Because I could, I actually crop stuff out of it because of the fact that I'm going past that one page.
I've got my thoughts on that, but I'm going to yield to the professional.
I mean, I think as a manager, you have to have a little more.
I'll just cut to the chase. A resume is a way for the hiring manager to eliminate people, okay? And so they are looking for things that cause them to not want to look at a particular resume and to pay that much attention to it. So if it's overly long or overly brief, they're not going to pay attention to it. If it doesn't address the very specific characteristics, the competencies that are needed for that specific position, they're not going to pay attention to it. So you tailor it, you always tailor it to the specific position that you're applying for. I've been working 40 plus years And if I do a resume, it's not more than 2 pages long.
So 2 pages is okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In my humble opinion, if you can say everything wonderful about you in less than 2 pages, you either haven't done a hell of a lot or you don't know how to write. Okay?
So you're looking more like at a CV, because some of my doc CVs are like 30 pages long
I
at a
don't want
time.
anything like that. If you go over
Yeah.
3 pages, I'm throwing it away.
Yeah,
That's
and,
all that stuff.
and the other thing is you always have this cover letter where now you talk about the vivid stuff, the real meat and potatoes.
And the other thing is, to me, if you're sitting around sending out blind resumes to
Yeah.
people you don't know,
Yeah.
there's a word for that in economics. It's called stupid.
Yeah,
Why?
yeah.
Because people are getting these unsolicited resumes, or maybe, and they're scanning through them as fast as they can. That's not how you're gonna find that job you want. You want your name and preferably your resume by hand delivered to them by somebody you know, with some sort of a referral. I'm not saying that blind resumes don't work, but they've got such a small probability compared to another DC, wasn't it, on networking? Yeah, if you put that resume in the hands of 6 to 10 people, and it's very well done, and it's 2 or 3 pages long, and it comes along with a cover letter and with a verbal, I know this guy, I've been working with him, I've seen what he's done, I think he might be a good fit for some of the things you're looking for, take a look. That's a whole different world than opening up the envelope and reading it. So that's again why I argue that a couple of pages, maybe 3 pages, is fine. Because it comes with a lot more
That's gonna
credit.
sell you, right?
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in your cover letter is where your personality can come out. And I tell you, I mean, and I'm reading more of this now, right now, about the HR profession, that we can judge, I meant to post it, I didn't. It said basically resumes are becoming a losing proposition for HR offices. Because they tell you what somebody has the skills to do, not how well they do them, and most importantly, not how well they work as a member of a team with other people. Well, your cover letter is your personality talking. And that should convey the idea that I'm optimistic, I'm energetic, I like working with people, I'm creative, I take direction well, whatever. How do you get that across in a resume? I don't think so. So when I hear the news and somebody says, yeah, I've been sending out resumes for 2 years and can't find a job, well, I know why. You're sitting at home thinking somebody's going to discover you. It ain't happening.
In the HR now, mostly the screening process involves electronics. And they have this software that'll go through and they'll look for 10 to 12 words. If those 10 to 12 words are there, then you make the cut to the next round. If they're not, it doesn't matter what all of the stuff that you put on there. So you gotta make sure that you tailor the document, whether it be the resume or the cover letter, again, specifically to the job that you're applying for.
You want that person to finish a cover letter and resume and say, I'm not sure how good a fit this is, but this is an interesting person. I'd like to talk to him. And to do that, you've got to get the hooks in fairly early, somewhere in that reading for them. There's got to be 1 or 2 things that go, oh, wow. It's just like writing advertising copy. If you write a paragraph of advertising and the person's not hooked in the first sentence or 2, he stops reading. So as you bring this up, what do you put at the top of your resume? You know, your name and contact information, but what usually goes next? Objective, okay? I use a different format. I say offering. Offering 17 years experience with this and a degree in that. That's not an objective. I don't know that you care what my objective is. I think you want to know what I can do for you. So I use offering, and that's different enough they go, what the hell is that? That's a hook.
I never use objective. The objective is to
Just
get
to
the
get a
job.
We'll work for food.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you're writing your resume, are you more proving your employability than anything else?
I'm proving that I will bring to you things that will either make you money or make your life better. Something in that general area. And that me, the person, not just the skills or degrees or whatever that I have. My friend John Spence sent out a little query to a number of people, and he said, he's working on a book on leadership, working with a student. He says, send me in 9 words or less what it takes to be successful. Nine words or less. I've been worrying about that for 3 days now, trying to figure out what I was going to say. It's the same idea. How do you boil it all down? For me right now, what I've got so far is conquer your fears, care for others, and laugh every day. 8 words. But it's the same problem you've got in trying to craft these documents. How do I say the early stuff early with a hook? How do I say it in such a way that it's memorable and engaging without sounding pompous? We look forward to reading your submissions.
Would you put, you know, because some of us have been in the work field for a long time, would we put what we did way back before that didn't apply to any of this on the resume?
I'll do it, Jimmy.
Not unless it applies to the position that you're seeking.
When I see people come in and tell me, you know, I finished high school at so-and-so. No. I was, by the time you're at your bachelor's degree, we know you finished high school. So now we want to know, what have you been doing in your post-secondary studies? Now, if there's some stuff from your high school background that is unique, memorable, I wouldn't leave it out. You did something really unique, fine. But just to say I finished high school in Coral Gables in 1993,
Well, like you went, I started as a waitress, I worked on work, and then I've gotten into this, you wouldn't go all the way back to them sort of things that you started out at 18 years old.
And some of us more seasoned employees, I'm putting the dates that you graduated from schools and all that stuff. Just I went to such high school. If it becomes, you know, comes into play later on, that's a different thing. But you know, people are people, and subconsciously they will begin to make judgments about you based on when you did what.
Well, and most of them I look at don't put a date in, so you're trying to figure out the age. And one thing I look at is how often they jump from job to job.
Sure.
I do look at that a lot.
and if there is some job changing, I want to know why. And if you don't want to explain why, then I'll make up my own answer, and it will not be to your advantage.
Right. And when everyone starts to be, I had a conflict with my supervisor, then it's.
That's the kiss of death. You know? I had a conflict with my supervisor, and I'm ugly. Loser.
So when you're doing your resumes, how many years should you go back? Because see, I was told by a technical professor, you go back 10 years. But sometimes people have been on their jobs longer.
If the experience that you have is relevant to the job, put it on there, no matter how far back it is. If it's relevant to the specific job that you're applying for.
Okay. So do we tell you what job it is so that you know if it is to that? I mean,
Oh, not for this assignment, I
No,
wouldn't.
okay.
You're not having to do a resume for this class, I don't think. Did I put a resume?
Yeah.
No, you don't have to.
Oh, okay.
Part of,
I thought I'd lift that up.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, we'll take a look at it then.
Okay, last question. And I'll shut up.
Good conversations, keep going.
Bulleted or paragraphed? I mean, because in my current resume, it's kind of, my job entails a lot, so just putting a couple, you know, trying to bullet it is a little bit hard. So I've got, you know, like a simple paragraph, small paragraph, you know, that kind of explains some of the different duties that I do. But in the professional writing class, she recommended that I bulleted it out. No
Doesn't
preference?
matter, no preference.
Okay.
Between bold print, italic print, and bullets, I think you can organize a document that it's comfortable to read. And I wouldn't be tied to any particular rule. I would stay away from cursive fonts. Yeah. And a neat signature is a good thing, not a scrawl. I've seen the way you write on that first test. Some of you need to slow down on your signature. What else?
Somebody else's turn.
If you've got more questions, by all means ask them, or more points to discuss.
On assignment 4, meeting management. Well, you asked a question.
So, have all of you looked at that or done it yet, WA4, meeting management?
That's the fun one.
What'd you think of that? Would you want to work for that guy?
You know what's interesting about that, though, if you research it, when I first read it, I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah,
When you
that's
research
what I
it,
thought.
there's actually some good points in there. It's just the way it's done. There is time management in it. You know, he sets tasks to be done at the end. He assigns goals to every single person. So you gotta actually go a little deeper and say, well, wait a minute, you got 2 minutes per person? His attitude, his tone,
The tone and the attitude.
all that kind of stuff, yeah.
Real horses,
Yeah.
southbound end going north, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Read the
Like, I
company.
was thinking like him, I was like, what's the, but that, you know,
Be on the alert for a document that I will post to Canvas in the next day or two pertaining to that.
okay, cause I was
But
like.
please, you had other
really?
questions or comments about that?
It just kinda like went over my head and I had to read it like 4 times, just to kinda,
Read it
you know,
along
the-
with the accompanying document.
okay, cause I was like, wait a minute.
Does anyone recall how much money it cost in terms of hourly wages to hold those people in a 1-hour meeting?
I thought it was $258 or something like that an hour, something along.
Yeah, is that the cost of the meeting?
Oh, no,
No.
you got all the other stuff, you got.
You got the opportunity cost of what they could have been doing, and you got the aggravation cost of just making them be there.
Right.
So,
You got utilities, you got any media that's being used, if you're
Yeah.
printing stuff off, it goes on and on.
they can get pretty atrocious. I think the aggravation is the worst and most unnecessary part.
Cause it made me start thinking of things that we do at work when we have our meetings, and I was like, oh my God. I kinda get the feel of what it's talking about, because like he was saying, the cost and everything, cause we bring all sites at one place, we shut down everything, all sites. And we could be making money doing services and stuff, and then when you get there, it's like a meet and greet. So you figure this is a bunch of crap. So,
And you have that attitude when you walk out of it.
Yeah.
And you take it back with you.
yes, and then all they do is sit and eat and gossip.
Meet and greet and eat.
There
Okay.
you go.
Accomplish
The
almost
lawyers waste
nothing.
some money on
Yeah,
it.
and they give you a handout, so it's like I could have just read this on my own time. So,
Then why hold meetings?
exactly, but we do.
One, if you've got a real important message to get out, you don't want it to be ambiguous, and you don't want to see it being told secondhand to other people. And sometimes when you put stuff out in writing, the context of it and the tone of it are completely lost, and people take it way wrong. So sometimes you need people to sit people down and say, here are the facts from the horse's mouth. See my body language, hear my tone of voice, etc. Here's the background leading to it. By that exercise, we're not trying to teach anybody that you should never hold meetings. But we are trying to teach that meetings are expensive, and all too often they are not necessary,
Right.
and they do positive harm to an organization. So there's a balance in there. Nothing's really black and white. You do need to, if you're going to have a meeting, you do need to have an agenda. You do need to have a timekeeper. And you need to have whoever's running the meeting in control enough to say, let's pick that up at a later time, we're a little behind schedule, okay, and force it on out. If you keep your people longer than you told them they were going to be there, my rule of thumb is if you're going to have them there more than 30 minutes, you got an issue, okay? And if you're in control of the meeting and you can't facilitate that along, your credibility as a leader goes right down the tubes. That's the reason for the agenda. Well, we're supposed to take this up right now. Here we go. And if they think you're not a nice person, that's why you get paid the big bucks, right? So much for meeting management, or did you have another thought on that?
No, I was just, it just put me in the mind of my dog, that's all. Like, personal experience.
Okay. We don't have an agenda when we come to this meeting, do we? Why is that?
The class.
You know, that's second agenda.
What do you suppose our objective is by holding these evening classes when we could otherwise be sipping a martini on the back porch?
So we can ask questions.
Clear up confusion. Any-
Above all, to get you engaged with us so we can communicate. And you won't hesitate to come to us with a question or clarification or anything else, and so that any kind of distance between us that began at the beginning of the term, I want that as much eliminated as possible, that you're comfortable coming to any of us at any reasonable time and let, you got an issue outside this class, through the whole BAS program, or anything else you got going on. We'll see how that goes over the next year or two as you progress through the program. We do keep an eye on you. We have an organizational management faculty meeting Thursday. We will be discussing students, I'm sure, by name, just like you talk about us.
Wonderful.
It got real quiet. Anything else? You want to do yours, or you want me to do the math thing first?
Take 5 minutes.
Go ahead.
Okay, as I read, particularly the writing assignments, not just in this class, but in a number of classes, if you remember my background, it's HR, and specifically the equity, diversity business in the last few years. And one of the things that I've found is that we tend to use some words interchangeably, and I find that there's a lot of confusion about what's what and what we're saying when we use specific terms. So I'm going to spend about 5 minutes talking about 3 different concepts. The first one is second one is, and the third one is. That's become the buzzword now. That's what everyone uses, diversity, diversity, diversity. And when they use that, they use it to mean all of these, when in reality they're very separate things. This is a legal concept. Things like Title VII, the ADA, and all of those kinds of things. And it basically says, okay? We know from statistics and a lot of other things that in our history and in the past, this has not always been true, particularly as it relates to women and minorities. There have been a lot of studies that say that women make about 78, 76 cents to the dollar compared to men and those kinds of things. So there's this thing that came along a few years ago called affirmative action. Basically what it says is right all wrongs. So this is supposed to be temporary. This is a permanent thing. This is a temporary thing. Once you have remedied any kinds of issues that may have gone on in the past, then this goes away. The third one says that we are all unique. It basically says everything that's different about all of us, because we all have things that are different. And at the same time, we can find some value and perhaps use in a business sense those things that we have in common. So again, they are similar, they're kind of like cousins, but they're actually 3 very different things. That makes sense?
Does that say value what?
All differences and similarities. Okay.
Equal employment opportunity, treat everyone the same,
Yeah.
is still the law of the land.
Yeah.
And AA or affirmative action was a presumably temporary
So
measure to
presumably-
correct things.
It's been a long
still-
temporary.
It's still around.
Yeah, in employment and in education in some instances. Basically, from a legal perspective, it's folks who are doing business with the government and they have contracts of $50,000 or more, they're still required from a legal sense to do this. They actually have to put together a plan every year. That's why like Santa Fe and those always put one of those together.
But diversity then as a concept is not a legal thing
Nah.
or legally binding thing.
No, but
It's more of an objective for a
It's-
business or?
yeah, and in fact, it's just kind of an objective. And you try to use all of the things that everyone in the organization brings to the table to make the organization more successful. Cool? All right. So, I'm gonna do, this is a funnel. Nice funnel, right?
Take your word for
Okay, let's suppose we're talking about an employment perspective. First thing you gotta do is find applicants, right? So, remember I talked about affirmative action? What you do is, you try to find a way to get more people who have the characteristic that you're looking for into the top of the funnel. So you might do targeted marketing. You see commercials and things that clearly aim at women or that kind of thing. So you might do targeted marketing and all of those kinds of things. The idea is to expand the pool of applicants at the top. Once you get them in a hiring situation, the job closes, this affirmative action goes away. And now the legal process, EEO, comes into perspective. So as you do the screening, you do the testing, you do the interviewing, and all those kinds of things, you treat everybody the same. Make sense? Up here, you're trying to get as many people into the system as you can, but once you get them in, you treat everybody exactly the same. So that the best qualified person is the person who gets selected for the position, or the person who gets selected to go to that college. Cool? All right. Last little thing. Let's talk about this diversity. The last competency you did was on networking. And remember you had you had the inner ring, and you had the secondary tier, and you had the third. Think about that. Okay, this is you. Here we're going to have what was the inner ring. This is what we call your internal dimensions. This will be things like your age, your race, your gender. Some would say sexual orientation, some don't agree. And ethnicity. What do all those things have in common?
You can't really control them.
Bingo. That's why I said some will argue that this is not, doesn't go there. But you can't really control them. That's just who you are. Okay? So that's the inner ring. The secondary ring, we call it external dimension. That will be things like parent status, are you married? Religion. We can basically choose whatever religion we want. But again, some will argue that this goes in here because some will say, I was born a Christian, I was born Muslim or whatever. But generally, in general, we can control these things. Location. We've all heard the discussions about the South versus the North. Income. We've all heard the discussions about income disparities and how that plays a part. How about recreation habits, the kinds of things that we like to do when we're away from work? All of these things are playing a part with all of us every day, whether we at work or in a personal situation. And finally, the third tier is kind of the organizational dimension. So let's say in a work situation, are you management or not? Or in school, are you an instructor or are you a student? Seniority. Are you in a union? What department you're in? In some organizations, one department may have more prestige than another. So when we think of the concept of diversity, we got to take all of these things into consideration and decide to what degree and how we might want to utilize those things to make the organization better. In a nutshell, that's about a 2-week class. I don't want to do any more than that because actually there's a course called Diversity in this program. I don't teach it, but there is a course for it.
Let's say recreation, the second tier. What did that one say?
That's recreation habits. I like to read, you like to go fishing.
Okay.
And sometimes in work situations, cliques get formed because of those kinds of things. The folks who do the hunting and fishing don't want to participate with the bookworms and that kind of thing. And they cause conflict. So you have to have some understanding of all of those things.
So in a sense, this becomes potentially a source of conflict, ongoing conflicts, or potentially a source of synergy and team.
So if you're putting a team together, you think about what does this one bring that that one doesn't bring. You know, okay, we want to make sure that we have the single person's perspective as we discuss this issue and that kind of thing.
And what about the top one, the very top? What does that say?
Rank and file. So as opposed to a manager or a student as opposed to an instructor.
Yeah, rank and file, you do work, manager, you don't.
Does that make sense? So I just want to spend just a minute to provide a little bit of clarity because I think that there's a lot of confusion on that particular issue. So, there we go.
And what do you know about the diversity within your own organization? If you're sitting at your desk all day and never going out and seeing people, talking to them, socializing, seeing what's going on.
Yeah. We used to have the GRU, the power plant folks. There was always conflict going on because the folks who were out in the plants were beefing because of the people in the quote-unquote Taj Mahal. They're sitting behind their desk, blah, 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 and we're out here doing all of the work, and vice versa. So that kind of thing can be problematic.
So if you're still sitting behind your desk, you may have a lot of strengths in your organization. You don't have a clue about them.
There you go.
As well as the problems that may be involved. Okay. All right. We got about 10 minutes. No, we can go a little longer than that. We're going to spend 15 or 20 minutes. Let's do a little bit of math. Got a calculator handy? We're going to do real straightforward break-even problem. Break-even meaning how much money do I have to make to pay all my costs but not make any profit, just to cover all my costs. There's 2 or 3 ways to go about this. We don't want to make it complicated. I can assure you, you will see it again in accounting with Mr. Hooper. You'll see it again in finance with Mr. Oliveira. So if you can just get the general concepts down, that'll do us for this course. Here's the situation. You've got an assisted living facility. You have 50 beds in that living facility for your residents. Now, these are typically elderly people who need some varying degrees of help or assistance in their daily lives. So as a part of this whole process, you provide meals to everyone in a dining hall. You have medical staff on hand. And you have your combination housekeeping and what I would just call quasi-professional staff with some limited degrees of medical training. And you have these residents So that's one circle of concern. Your employees and their different areas of responsibility are another concern. And then, of course, outside that, you've got families, and you darn sure better be concerned about them and how they're doing, you know. And so you've got an ongoing couple or three challenges every day of your life. One is keeping up the quality of life. Cleanliness, health care, quality and quantity of food being served. You've got to keep morale up, so you probably have somebody as your entertainment director who puts on programs for the residents, etc. You got a very busy life. But one of the other things you got to worry about is, of those 50 beds, how many of them do you have to keep full throughout the year, on average, in order to survive as a business? And we'll make this your own personally owned ALF for the time being. And so to figure out what that means, we say, here are your costs. And they'll be of two types. They'll be sort of fixed, which means I don't care if you've got 1 resident or 50, you got these costs. Okay? Utilities probably falls into that. Most of your management staff falls into that. Rent or mortgage payment, insurance, you've got a fairly fixed number there. And just to make it really easy for ourselves, let's say that number comes up to, and every time I make up numbers it screws up, so bear with me. You've got to have $100,000 a month to cover your fixed costs. And then you have your variable costs. Variable costs are the costs that change or vary with the number of residents that you have, the number of products that you produce, if you can use that term, okay? So every time somebody comes in as a resident to live in your facility, you've got to wash more linen. You've got to fix more meals. And at some point you may have to add additional staff, because you have by law, some sort of ratio on how many staff you must have for your residents to be safe. We're going to make up a number, and we're going to say that the variable cost every time a resident moves in is $1,000 a month per resident. So, if you had 50 beds and you could keep them all filled, how much would you have to charge each resident to cover those costs? That's our first simple problem, 50 beds. Mathematically, the price we charge has got to be times 50 beds, has got to be enough to cover our costs, which are $100,000 in fixed plus $1,000 per resident. And we know that if we have 50 residents, because we're at 100% capacity, we can figure this out pretty easy, can't we? Right? We get price times 50 equals 100,000 plus 50,000. So price times 50 equals 150,000. Dividing through by 50, the price we need to charge in that simplistic sense is $3,000 per month per resident. Without trying to work on formulas, do you see the concept? That's the most important part of it. Because then if we start messing with it, which we are, it won't be so bad. Whatever price I charge times the number of occupied beds I'm going to have has got to be enough to cover my fixed and my variable costs. So let's change it just a little bit. Let's say that I expect I can only run at 90% capacity. What does that mean, 90% capacity? It means I'll only, on the average, have 45 beds filled per month. So go back and change your numbers. I'm going to have 45 people, and I'm going to have 45 times 1,000 for variable cost. what does that do to my calculation? P times 45 equals 145. P is equal to 145 over 45. Anybody got a calculator?
It's $3,222.22.
$3,222.22. Anybody else confirm that?
Yeah.
Good. What happened? I still gotta get $1,000 per resident, but now I have to cover my fixed costs with 45 people instead of 50. That's all. Not rocket science. We doing okay so far? Let's take this as reality for a minute. If you run and own this thing, what's the first thing you do when you go in, open the door, and go into your office every day? What do you suppose? Huh?
Turn on the light.
Well, we'll assume the lights have been on, right? It's a 24-hour facility.
Check the number of people you have.
The first thing I would be counting is how many beds we got filled. How many beds we got filled. Beginning of the day, end of the day, beginning of the day, end of the day. And if we go for a week in a row with only 44 rooms, what am I thinking? We're not doing too well. We got a little problem here. What's going on? Why are we not filling these beds? Is it our marketing? Is it the quality of our service? Are some of the families bad-mouthing us? Is there an issue going on that I don't know about? And then comes the management challenge. Go find out. How would you find out? Suppose that your utilization has gone from 90% over the last 2 years, from 90% to 87 to 85 to 82 to 74.
I'd be looking at my referral sources. Where have my referrals been coming from? Are they coming from the hospitals? You know, from the patient maybe who has been hospitalized for a long time? Then I'd be contacting the hospitals and networking with them.
That's a home run answer. That's the same reason we don't send out blind resumes. The most important form of communication is still eyeball to eyeball, face to face. And that would mean that as the director of this facility, you or someone you really trust who's really good, and maybe has a better personality, I don't know, had better be out in the community maintaining and nurturing these contacts. Okay?
I'd also be checking with the patients
Absolutely.
and the residents to see if they're satisfied or what they think that we
How would you check with those families and the residents?
go up and meet them.
Now there's a hell of an idea. Invite them into an open house every once in a while. Ask them, some of them are going to be local, and you'll see them in there every day. And no problem, go out and chat with them and walk around with some of them, and you know from your records, well, this fellow's family lives up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. They wanted to lead him down here because he's got a couple of friends, but you write the family and say, next time you're coming to town, let me take you to lunch. And you nurture those relationships and gather that information. Okay, that's good. Any other thoughts? Our utilization's falling, getting lower and lower.
You also talk to your employees and
Why?
see how satisfied the employees are with what you are rewarding them with.
And then you get, for example, into a discussion. Well, boss, you're paying us all $11 an hour, and we're not real happy. If you paid us $12.50 an hour, we'd be happier and probably do a better job. Well, what's that going to do over here?
That's gonna raise that cost.
It's going to raise that cost. And so you get into the quandary, and it's a legitimate question. Would I be better off if I did that? Do I need some sort of employee recognition programs? What do we know? You've done some reading on this now. Remember, we're just reading, hopefully, on motivation.
Yeah.
What's better? Did we do this question before? What's better? Quarterly bonuses or unanticipated rewards?
Unanticipated rewards.
Why?
Because even though money's good, most people like it's more of an incentive. It doesn't.
They want to know that they're actually being
Imagination.
rewarded for what they're doing, more than a bonus that comes out that they filter into their monthly budget.
Okay.
Why would they work harder if they know they're gonna get it?
It's more,
Say again?
Why would they work harder if they know they're gonna get it already?
Right, too often a bonus becomes an expected part of my compensation.
Well,
Let me, go ahead.
your bonus also is, you can view that as, the company's already got the benefit for me to hit the bonus, they already enjoyed that increased productivity for whatever it cost me to get to that bonus. So it's a
But the first time you don't give the bonus, what's happened?
issue.
You've got issues, yeah.
it's more personal. Whenever you give like an unanticipated, it really lets the employees know that you're paying attention to them and, you know, you're appreciative of that extra mile, that discretionary effort that they put
Do you
into
need to
it.
do that in a different way with different employees?
Yes.
Yes.
Give me an example.
Some people may, oh,
Eric?
Actually, some people don't like to have the overly recognition and have everyone basically, they feel like they have to get a target on their back.
Mm-hmm.
So having a more one-on-one personal, hey, you know, you did a real good job yesterday, I really appreciate what you did, that's good enough for them. Whereas someone else, they wanna have the email sent out to everyone, they want everyone to know that their face pops up on some billboard somewhere that they did a great job.
Yeah.
Based on ego, some people have that, some people don't, so that's, you do get more personal like that. But at the same time, it also becomes very subjective.
Yes.
Over time, it can become extremely subjective. So you'll have people who will work very hard at their job, but basically keep their head down, don't make a lot of waves, but they really do them, they grind out the work, they never have a problem on any of their checks or any of the work, they're never getting any recognition. Whereas Jim Bob, he happens to be one of the attaboys who was on the high school football team with their boss, and he is always getting the attaboy awards. He's always getting that $25 gift card to go over to Moe's or something like that. He's always getting extra time off whenever he requests it, but I'm sitting here grinding myself out, but I don't get any recognition. And how do I know that I am actually doing the job above and beyond? That's where the whole quarterly bonus is. It's for that type of person to have the quarterly bonuses. It means that if I make my numbers, I know I'm doing good. If I excel in those numbers, everybody can see those numbers. They know I'm really doing better than Jim Bob over here, who does play golf and whatever and have a great time. It's got to have a kind of a balance of both. Yes, you can have the quarterly bonuses, but they're bonuses. They're not supposed to be there. They're extra for going above and beyond.
Okay.
They're for not being dissatisfied. So
Well,
You've never experienced that stuff, have you?
I've already.
You relive it, you relive
So
it.
that's why you
Look,
also.
bonuses are gonna work for some people. Bonuses are very powerful. For other people, they're not.
Yes.
Your job is to know what works for different people
right.
and to do it properly, to reward them properly, and to be aware when you're not doing it properly. Find out when they're upset. Okay? Ask them to do an evaluation on you anonymously.
Well, not
I
all
dare
jobs
you.
can you give a bonus. I
This
mean,
is
they
your
have
business, so
do
we're
it.
going to allow some of that. Because, yeah, those kind of constraints can take away 90% of your management control. Absolutely right. My thought was if I had someone who's a D-type personality, I would want to reward him or her by recognizing what they did. And in the way in which I speak to them, in whatever I may give them or reward them with, it speaks to what they did. If I have an S, what do I want to reward?
Gonna be quiet now.
I want to reward them for who they are and how they work with the team and how they help out. And that's a whole different conversation. Even that little one-on-one brief 30-second, you're doing a great job, is a different conversation with those two people. Okay? So you've got a million, you know, I love the idea of an ALF. My dad was in one for the last 4 years he was alive. I got to know a lot of the people there and had these kind of conversations with them. It's its own little world. And you can be really brilliant, or you can absolutely screw up. And if you're not attuned to how people are thinking and feeling, that thing will go straight down the tubes before you can blink an eye. It's amazing. And this particular one was complicated by very large corporate management, which left them virtually no resources. Let's add one other thing to our issue here. In addition to these costs, you would also like to make $10,000 a month in profit. Pi is my symbol for profit. How do we plug that into our equation? How do we do that, plug that into our calculation?
You add it on the other side.
Added is another fixed cost, okay? So that my price times the 45 beds I hope to have occupied on average will make me $100,000 in fixed costs, $10,000 in profit, and $1,000 per bed. Okay? Not too complicated yet? What did that do to the price, by the way? Anybody figure this one out? Price is $155,000 or $45. Anybody?
$3,444.44.
$3,444 and how many? 45?
44.
44 cents. So for you to make 10 grand a month, your average resident's got to pay still now another couple $100 a month, something like that. Okay. And so now, if you had to go back and talk about setting up a bonus program or a reward program, you're going to be able to see pretty quickly what it's going to do to either your price or your profit. One of them's going to have to give. Eric?
In that respect, I would also build in an actual reward bonus fund built into the price.
Mhm.
Even that price out to about,
Round it up to $3,600 and build a little fund and do what with it?
And then over the year, for parties, expenditures, whatever, showing good faith within employees, that would be the fund that you'll give, and that would also be the fund to provide various rewards and bonuses to everyone else as well. On a small level scale, but it also gives you enough wiggle room, just in case if costs go up or something like that. Oh, well, we can't do all the extra expenditures, but that's where you can take that extra little stipend if you need to on a short-term basis.
I completely agree with you. My experience watching small businesses is that 70% of small business owners, if they get that little extra kitty built, it's going to them. They have real and imagined reasons that they have better use for that money than what you just described. I'm leery of that. That's a personal bias, but it's based on 35 years of watching it.
Well, people will get greedy because they'll think, oh, I can just take it from here, I can just take it
No,
from here, I can just take it from
what I'm saying is that small business owners too often are fearful and barely making it, or think they're barely making it, or planning for their retirement, and they're not going to squeeze an extra nickel out of that business that doesn't go into their pocket. And again, chalk that up to my bias, but it's alive and well. Let me ask you this. If you're going to have 5 rooms empty on average all year long, what are you going to do with them? Is that a resource you can use, and how would you use it?
Yep. Rotate it.
Huh?
Yeah.
You can use I'd be able to rotate the various, so if I'm pulling someone out and that room's gonna be empty, I'm actually gonna rotate them over to one of the already empty rooms that have already been sanitized and cleaned.
Sure.
Put my next resident here, then have this.
Then you've got an empty room that you can paint or recarpet or whatever. That's a good one. Other uses for the empty
For
rooms?
expanded services, if you already got medical staff there, maybe you can do like elderly care services, something of that nature.
Maybe you can take those extra 5 rooms and create some other sort of revenue center.
Like a wound
Okay.
care center or something like that.
Yeah. Or maybe you can take 1 or 2 of those rooms and use them for public relations. In the sense of, we identify a family that we know is pretty tight for money, and they'd like to come in out of town and see Grandpa, and we say, why don't you come on in and stay 3 nights with us here in the facility, no charge. You think that word would multiply out? I think so.
Like a boarding room.
Yeah. Temporary lodging, etc. Okay, so we want to think creatively. You okay with the math?
Yes.
Make up your own system. Make up any kind of facility, but so many beds, so many revenue centers, so many fixed costs, so many variable costs. Crank out a couple of those for practice. That's about as bad as it's going to get as far as this kind of math. The other math is a time value of money. We've already done it once. Go over it some more. When we meet a week from tonight, if you've got any kind of math questions, try to get them to me before class, and we'll hammer them out here in class. And if it looks like we're not going to have time, I'll make another video on your questions if I need to, and I'll post that. All right? Other comments, other questions? Anybody?
So next Wednesday, week after next.
2 weeks from tonight, I hope. I just work here, ma'am. I'm not sure of all the answers.
August 6th. August 6th.
Okay, okay.
Okay, anything else?
I don't like you just look at me.
I'm waiting. If anybody's got to say something,
That's August 6th, we're meeting in the Key Building.
Oh, that,
Ah, yes,
Before the final.
the final.
It's August sixth, our final.
Yeah.
No, 14th is our final.
13th is the final. This says August's class meeting will be in P building at 5:30.
Yeah.
I'll check that out and post an announcement to straighten that one out too. What was the other one I was gonna straighten out? Oh, we did. How much time for the video? That's covered. I'll check the meeting location for next class. Good. Anything else? Depending on y'all to keep me on the straight and narrow.
I don't remember if it asked for it in the assignment, but I don't remember seeing a cover letter. Do you, if it doesn't ask for it, do you think you want us to send in a cover letter?
I think that's what.
Does it? It is on there?
5 says a resume.
Resume, cover letter.
Okay, yeah, okay, okay.
Interview video.
Okay. Which will be 5 to 15 minutes long.
Just post the link on.
Yeah, put it on YouTube, send us a URL. Be sure you post it as unlisted, not public, not private. And we'll just, the three of us sit around and watch them and have a good laugh.
I believe that.
All right, thank you. Peace.